poet once said, journalism is what we need to make democracy work. But in our current age, it is also what we need to make our planet work, to ensure a sustainable future for generations to come. A very warm welcome to all. I am Neba Anna Thomas, a second year student of Department of Media Studies, Christnagar College, Trivandrum. Welcome to IMPETUS 2025, an international conference on media, planetary health, and human progress, navigating the intersections of communication, environment, and global well being for a sustainable future. Organized by the Department of Media Studies and IQAC, Christnagar College, Trivandrum, India, in association with Artificial Intelligence Journalism for Research and Forecasting, UAE, and Focus Games, UK. Let us start with a silent prayer. Before we embark on today's insightful discussion, let us take a moment to reflect on the remarkable conferences hosted by our department over the past few years. These events have been a testament to our commitment to media innovation, critical exploration, and academic excellence. Through diverse and thought provoking themes, engaging discussions, and distinguished speakers, our past conferences have paved the way for meaningful conversation and new perspectives in the ever evolving field of media. Join us now as we take a brief journey through these impactful gatherings, revisiting the ideas and dialogues that continue to inspire and shape our academic pursuit. Now, I would like to invite Ishan Shafiq Mohammed, a second year student of Department of Media Studies, Christnagar College, to brief us up about Impetus 2020 and 2021.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
Ishan,
Ishan.
continue.
Okay. Impetus 2021 International Conference on Social Media and Developing Societies. Uh, Excuse me, I meant to say Impetus 2020 Global Summit on Artificial Intelligence in Journalism. The inaugural event, Impetus 2020, held from November 5th to 19th, focused on the intersection of journalism and artificial intelligence. It aimed to raise awareness about the transformative impact of technology on the media landscape. The event featured distinguished speakers, including Professor Charles Beckett, Director of Polish Journalism, AI, London School of Economics and Political Science, UK, delving into the challenge of AI journalism, and Francesco Marconi, computational journalism and co-founder of Applied Excel USA, offering insights into the artificial intelligence and future of journalism. And also we have Professor Mohammed Abdul Zahir, CEO AI Journalism for Research and Forecasting UAE, discussing AI journalism and 7G journalism, the future of media beyond AI technologies. And Dr. Nicholas Dalkopoulos, Professor of Computational Journalism, Northwestern University, USA, sharing thoughts on automating the news, how algorithms are rewriting the media. And finally, Dr. Shiva Kintali, CEO TrueDat Inc. USA, speaking about full stack photojournalism using AI and blockchain. This conference laid the groundwork for understanding the evolving role of AI in journalism and equipped attendees with necessary skills for navigating this transformation. IMPETUS 2021 International Conference on Social Media and Developing Societies. In 2021, IMPETUS explored the multi-phased impact of social media on developing societies. From November 10th to 12th, the conference brought together thought leaders such as Dr. Julie Fossetti, Global Director of Research, International Center for Journalists, USA, delivering the inaugural address. Dr. Alton Grizel, Program Specialist, UNESCO, Paris, France, providing valuable insights into media literacy and development. And Professor Diraj Murthy, Professor of Media Studies and Sociology, University of Texas at Austin, USA, presenting on digital media research methods. And finally, Dr. Mark A. Smith, Director, Social Media Research Foundation, USA, sharing expertise on social media research, social media network analysis, and NodeX. The conference critically examined the role of social media in mass communication, exploring its potential benefits and changes. And now I would like to invite Neba to speak on Impetus 2023 and 2024.
Impetus 2023 focused on reimagining the media. Impetus 2023 International Conference on Content for Public Good. It focused on reimagining the media ecosystem in the era of paywall and generative AI, held under the guidance of notable speakers such as Professor Ashraf S., Dean of Digital University of Kerala, a computer engineer and scientist who offered insights into machine learning algorithms. Along with him, we had Anna Cristina Rules, Senior Program Specialist at UNESCO, Paris, advocated for freedom of expression and open access in the evolving media ecosystem. We also had Dr. Muhammad Abdul Zahir, Professor of Intelligent Integrated Media and Mass Communication at University of Sharjah, UAE, delivering the keynote of Media of Metaverse and the Metaverse Integrated Communication. Finally, we also had Melvin Bell, founder, director of Focus Games UK, discuss the effective use of digital games in public health campaign. The most recent conference we had was Impetus 2024, International Conference on the Evolution of Journalism. Impetus 2024 focused on human-centric creativity and technological integration in future media landscape, held from 22nd to 23rd January 2024. The conference brought together thought leaders such as Nick Newman, former BBC strategist, senior journalist and research associate at the Reuters Institute for Study of Journalism, Oxford University, UK. He shared his thoughts on journalism, media and technology trends and predictions for the year 2024, while Dr. Marit Jakola, Associate Professor and Co-Director of Nordicom, Nordic Center for Media Research, University of Gothenburg, Sweden, delivered a talk on artificial intelligence in the journalism curriculum. So, we are excited to share that these conferences have been a tremendous success, attracting various participants from all over the globe. We are deeply appreciative of the overwhelming response from thousands of participants representing nations such as India, Egypt, Myanmar, Pakistan, Japan, France, and many more. As we eagerly look ahead to Impetus 2025, we remain fully committed to fostering an environment that encourages innovation, learning, and global collaboration in the field of media studies. It is through these collaborations that we can continue to push the boundaries of knowledge and explore new horizons. Thank you all for your attention and involvement. We are thrilled to continue this journey of exploration and discovery together with all of you. And now it is my honor to invite Ms. Manju Rose Matthews, faculty and head of the Department of Media Studies, Christnagar College, Trivandrum, to deliver the welcome address. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to Ms. Manju Rose Matthews.
Thank you, Nepa. Hope I'm audible. Good evening. I'm Manju Rose Matthews, Head of the Department of Media Studies, Christnagar College, Maranello, Trivandrum. Welcome all to International Conference on Media, Planetary Health and Human Progress, navigating the intersection of communication, environment, and global well-being for sustainable future. Distinguished guests, esteemed speakers, and participants, on behalf of our Director, Reverend Father Shrek Madakal CMI, Principal Dr. Jolie Jacob, Organizing Team Emil Abraham, Dr. Akhila S., Binduja V., and all student coordinators, it is my honor to welcome you all to the opening session of Impetus 2025, 5th edition of International Conference organized by the Department of Media Studies and IQSA, Christnagar College, Trivandrum, India. The theme of this year's conference is Media, Planetary Health and Human Progress. This gathering brings together thought leaders, researchers, and media professionals to explore one of the most pressing issues of our time, the intricate relationship between human well-being and the health of our planet. I especially welcome our keynote speakers who accepted our invitation to join as opening speakers for the conference. Jessica Cronstedt is Program Director of Planetary Health Alliance and joins us from Johns Hopkins University, United States. And Dr. Antonia Ebru is the Director of Ecological and Earth Sciences, leading the Man and Biosphere Division at UNESCO Paris. We also welcome Melvin Bell from Focus Games UK and Professor Mohammed Abdul Zahir, from AIJRF UAE, our associate partners for the conference. Planetary health is more than an environmental concern. It is a defining challenge that affects public health, equity, and the survival of future generations. Planetary health underscores the deeper interconnection between human health and the health of the planet. It recognizes that environmental degradation, driven by the climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution, and resource depletion, directly impacts the well being of populations worldwide. In this context, planetary health is not just an environmental concern, it is a fundamental issue of public health, equity, and survival. As the world grapples with increasingly complex and interconnected crises, the health of our ecosystems has become a determinant of our collective future. As these challenges intensify, the role of media and communication becomes even more critical in shaping awareness, influencing policy, and mobilizing collective action. This conference aims to illuminate the power of journalism, storytelling, and digital platforms in addressing planetary health. Through insightful discussions, we will explore how media can bridge the gap between science, policy, and the public, ensuring the vital information reaches communities and decision makers alike. Together, we will examine innovative approaches to fostering international cooperation, elevating marginalized voices, and driving solutions for a sustainable future. The time for action is now. By uniting science, policy, media, and civil society, we can create a movement that safeguards both humanity and the ecosystem we depend on. Let us use this platform to inspire change and build a healthier, more sustainable world. The International Conference on Media, Planetary Health, and Human Progress seeks to highlight the critical importance of integrating planetary health into global policy, public awareness, and health systems. With the rise of environmental challenges such as air pollution, water scarcity, and zoonotic diseases, there is urgent need to rethink how we address the intertwined nature of human health and environmental sustainability. The conference will explore how the media, through journalism, social platforms, and storytelling, can amplify these critical issues, elevate marginalized voices, and drive action toward a healthier, more sustainable world. In the face of this growing planetary crisis, communication plays a pivotal role in bridging the gap between science, policy, and public engagement. It influences how individuals, communities, and nations understand and respond to environmental challenges and how they navigate the complex relationship between human development and planetary boundaries. This conference will bring together diverse experts to discuss innovative approaches in raising awareness, fostering international cooperation, and crafting solutions that safeguard both human health and the planet for future generations. Ultimately, our aim to build a global movement where media, science, policy, and civil society collaborate to ensure the well-being of both humanity and ecosystems we depend on. The time to act is now, and through dialogue and collaborations, we can create sustainable futures for all. I kindly invite Mr. Melvin Bell, Director of Focus Games UK, for the felicitation. Focus Games have been supporting us in many ways with our health communication and disease awareness initiatives. And thank you all for kindly joining and listening, patiently listening me. And I kindly request Melvin Bell to join and welcome Jessica once again and Antonio. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Distinguished guests, speakers, and participants, it's with great honour that I extend my support on behalf of Focus Games to the organisers, speakers, and attendees of IMPETUS 2025. At Focus Games, we believe that learning should be engaging, impactful, and transformative. As a company dedicated to learning, and game-based learning in particular, to address real-world challenges, we are proud to be associated with this prestigious conference, which brings together experts to explore the intersection of media, planetary health, and sustainable development. This conference is a beacon of collaboration and innovation, fostering critical discussions on how media can shape a healthier planet and a better future. In an era where global challenges demand creative solutions, interactive and experiential learning methods, like those that we champion at Focus Games, can empower individuals and organizations to think critically, communicate effectively, and act decisively. We commend the Department of Media Studies, Christ-Nagar College, and all participating institutions for creating this valuable platform. Your efforts in bringing together experts, researchers, and change makers will undoubtedly lead to a meaningful discussion and innovative solutions for a sustainable future. As we navigate the complexities of environmental health, digital media, and global well-being, we embrace the power of education, technology, and media to inspire change. On behalf of Focus Games, we extend our best wishes for a successful and impactful conference. May this event spark new ideas, lasting collaboration, and transformative solutions. And we look forward to hearing our speakers today and tomorrow and the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Melvin. Abdul Zahir, AI JRF, CEO of AI JRF, is in the lecture, so he won't be able to join. Over to Neba, please continue.
I would like to invite Megha for the keynote address of the introduction to the next keynote speaker.
Good evening and good morning, everyone. I am Megha Almaya, a second-year student of Media Department of Christ-Nagar College. I'm privileged and honored to welcome our keynote speaker, Jessica Cronster, the Program Director at the Planetary Health Alliance, Johns Hopkins University, USA. Jessica Cronster plays a key role at the Planetary Health Alliance, an organization that brings together over 475 member organizations to tackle global environmental change and its impact on health. She leads a range of interconnected programs from community building initiatives to partnerships focused on education, all aimed at mainstreaming planetary health on a global scale. With more than 15 years of experience in research, evaluation, and public health infrastructure development, Jessica is deeply committed to strengthening our understanding of how environmental changes affect human health and well-being. The Planetary Health Alliance is a growing consortium of over 480 universities, NGOs, research institutes, and government entities across 80+ countries, all working towards a common goal, addressing the challenges posed by global environmental change. Founded in 2015, PHA was initially hosted by Harvard University. However, since November 2023, the Secretariat has moved to Johns Hopkins University, where it continues its vital work under the Johns Hopkins Institute for Planetary Health. We are honored to have Jessica Cronster with us today. Please join me in welcoming her.
Thank you so very much. I'm really thrilled to have the opportunity to be a part of this event. As was mentioned so eloquently in the introductory comments, planetary health is a social movement, and social movements depend on the stories that we tell. And so it's really exciting to see all of you gathered together to really focus on how we can tell those stories in such a way to be able to prompt action for our collective future. So I'm going to begin with just an overview of planetary health. I know it's probably familiar, something you all are familiar with, but I think it is important to make sure that we're sort of seeing this with a common lens. One of the things that I'd like to note is 2025 represents the 10th anniversary of the Rockefeller Foundation Lancet Commission report that really brought the concept of planetary health to life. And we actually will be having events throughout the course of this year to celebrate the 10-year anniversary, the progress we have made to date, and to look forward to the work that we all have in front of us. Based on that Rockefeller Foundation Lancet Commission report, the Planetary Health Alliance was formed and put forth this definition that's on the screen. And I do want to just highlight a few key points about this definition. One, really the orientation and the focus on solutions. So planetary health is not just a field of study, it's a field of action. And in order to take that action, we need as many different fields coming together as possible. So we really see this as a transdisciplinary effort. The challenges that we face are whole of society challenges, and we need whole of society solutions. And so we need to have everyone coming together to confront these challenges. And as I said, it is a social movement. It is something where we need to galvanize action throughout all parts of society. In terms of what is our focus is, as mentioned in the introductory comments, looking across all the different ways that humans have disrupted Earth's natural systems, and in turn, how has that affected human health and the health and well-being of all who live on Earth. Sometimes we say it's climate change and it's everything change. So recognizing that it's not only the threat of a warming and changing climate, but also pollution and myriad other impacts on human health. And we often know that a picture is worth 1,000 words, although this is a picture with a lot of words, so it's sort of halfway in between. But here's a way that we like to sort of depict that broader picture of what planetary health is. And so you'll see, if you look across the outer rim of this circle of the globe, you'll see the different types of environmental changes that we're concerned with. So it's the overuse of scarce resources like fresh water and arable land. It's the way that we're polluting our air, soil, and water. It's the degradation to our oceans. It's the way we're adding nitrogen, phosphorus, and other chemicals to the biosphere. It's the way we've changed land use and cover change. So the way we have engaged in deforestation and the desertification that has happened. It is the loss of biodiversity, and of course, it is the changing climate. And all of those interact together. You can see them sort of collectively as those ecological determinants of health that affect health broadly. So everything from maternal and child health to infectious diseases that are showing up in different locations and different scales, to nutritional diseases, because not only does the increase in carbon dioxide affect the nutritional value of food, but we also know with the loss of pollinators, there are changes in which fruits and vegetables are available to us. And those in turn, along with other threats, cause concerns about non-communicable diseases. So how does our heart disease change with the changing availability of healthful fruits and vegetables? How does pollution contribute to asthma? And then, of course, there are those direct injuries that come from extreme weather, for example. All of these, we also don't want to lose sight of the mental health impacts of all of these traumas, of all of the dislocation that sometimes arises from lack of access to fresh food and water, of civic strife, of natural disasters, and just of the loss of the ecosystems and the natural environments that can bring such joy and healing to us as people. So we really want to think it's important when we're focusing on planetary health to have that whole view in mind so that we can have what we say an accurate diagnosis so that we can address the problem. But sometimes when you tell stories, it's helpful to give that historical context. So I'll briefly just want to speak about how did we arrive at where we are now, because I think that narrative is an important one in sort of framing how we move forward. And one of the things that is striking as you look back since about the 1950s is there has been these tremendous strides in public health gains from a couple of measures, such as the decrease in global child mortality, the increase in life expectancy. To be clear that these are not, these improvements have not been necessarily equitable, they're not sufficient, but there have been some improvements in terms of the global health since the mid of last century. However, we confront what we call this ecological paradox, that during this time, human health and well-being was improving, but at the same time, the health and well-being of the ecosystems was degrading. And you can see this pattern in a number of different charts. So this is what we sometimes refer to as that great acceleration, which is where you can see these patterns of consumption have really skyrocketed, all from about the dotted line here represents 1950. And so you can see that not only did population go up, but so did energy use, so did fertilizer consumption, the number of large dams, the water we use, the transportation, telecommunications, international tourism. So across all of these different areas, you see these very stark increases since around 1950. And you also see, not surprisingly, those effects in terms of the impact on natural systems. So not only do we have increases of carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, methane, et cetera, in the atmosphere, we see that our oceans are becoming acidified. We see that marine fish and shrimp are being captured at greater rates. We see more and more land is domesticated. There's less and less tropical forests. So all showing that same pattern starting really around that 1950 period. And we revisit then this ecological paradox because what we're seeing now is because of the decline in the ecological health and well-being, it's now starting to cause a decline in human health and well-being. And you can see from this quote from that Rockefeller Foundation paper that basically we have been borrowing against the health of future generations to realize current gains. And this trade-off is coming to affect us now as a growing proportion of that global burden of disease is being caused by the ways that we have harmed our ecosystems. This is just another sort of restatement of some of those consequences that I mentioned earlier about all the varying different health effects. And it is really important to note that these effects are not hitting us all equally, that there are communities that have historically been marginalized, who have been feeling the greatest harms in terms of malnutrition, heat stroke, cardiovascular disease, et cetera. The other side of that justice equation is the fact that those same populations are often not the ones that are contributing most to the harm. So this just shows one of the forms of ecological degradation in terms of carbon dioxide emissions. But you can see that the countries that are contributing the most are not necessarily the ones that are feeling the most pain. So I want just one more sort of context setting slide to really tell this story in a different way. And we've already talked about these environmental changes that are this green section here. We've sort of implicitly talked about those proximate causes, how, you know, we are affecting the quality of our air and our water and our food. And we've talked about the health impacts over here on the right in terms of how this is playing out in the global burden of disease. But there are two other really important components of this diagram, and these are really important because they help transition us to thinking forward in terms of what are the solutions. So the first is this column all the way on the left, which are those underlying drivers. So what are the behaviors and the cultural values that are causing us to have those consumption patterns that we mentioned before? What are the demographic shifts that have contributed to this? What technological changes are contributing to our impact on the environment? So again, one opportunity leverage point for change is looking at those underlying drivers, and particularly those consumption patterns and what is behind them, and how can we address those drivers so that we can mitigate the environmental harm. The other set that's really important are these modifying factors. So these are the things that go in between the exposures to the unclean air and the toxic exposures and the health effects. How are the characteristics of individuals, so things like gender, age, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status, as well as things like what policies are in place, what social supports are in place, what infrastructure exists. Those pieces there are ways to minimize the harms of the environment on people's health. And so another opportunity for us to intervene is to really think through how do we come up with those social infrastructure and policy systems that will lessen the adverse impacts of the earth degradation. And so as we move to thinking about solutions, I would really challenge us to focus our attention on where are those levers that we can control, where we can have an impact that to either lessen the extent to which we are harming earth systems, but also to reduce the negative impact on human health and well-being. And as promised, as I said, Planetary Health is a solutions-oriented field. And so I really want to spend the rest of this conversation talking about what a path forward might look like, and also specifically the role of media in this path forward. One of the ways that we like to think about this is that what we really need is a great transition. So this means changing the ways we do almost everything. It means changing how we produce and consume food, how we manufacture our products, where we get our energy. It means changing how we construct and live in cities and the built environments that we create. It's looking at how we manage the land and our resources. And all of this really comes into creating this movement that we've talked about, a movement that has both changes in behaviors, but more importantly, in those policy shifts that enable us to change our behaviors. And all of that is dependent on the stories we tell ourselves about our place in the world and our relationship with nature. It all is dependent on what we see as our vision for what is the future we want to collectively hold. And so that's where the power of stories becomes so critical in being able to be this force behind the social movement that we need. So I want to reflect on a couple of different types of stories that are out there, efforts to really change this narrative by changing the way we tell these stories. One is through an initiative that the Planetary Health Alliance hosts called the Constellation Project. And I just want to read this quote that kind of speaks to what is behind the Constellation Project. It says, a constellation is a group of stars connected by the imagination. We look up at the night sky and see a map of stories created by our need to understand the world around us and beyond. And so the Constellation Project really is hinged on this idea that we need to connect with those values, those stories, to really envision what is the future we collectively want. Another initiative that we were part of, which was very exciting, and I encourage you all to look into this if you are not familiar with this work already. But there's a team out of the University of Exeter in the UK that has a program they call We Are the Possible. And what they did is, in the lead up to the climate COP in Azerbaijan, they held a series of workshops, both with local communities in Azerbaijan and in Exeter and the UK, as well as some global workshops, which the Planetary Health Alliance members from across the world joined in on. And the conference organizers or the workshop organizers provided prompts. So it could be a picture, a color, a couple of words, and participants would write stories or parts of stories that came to them based on these prompts. And then the facilitators wove them together into this amazing anthology of 12 stories that really capture some of the anxieties that people are feeling about the current state of the Earth systems, some of the hopes for the future. And it was really one of these amazing processes, because not only are the stories themselves beautiful, but what was so powerful is knowing that there were literally hundreds of individuals throughout the world who collectively authored these stories. And so that coming together is something that I think is such a powerful dimension of storytelling. And I would encourage us all to think of creative ways that we can use our stories to bring together individuals and organizations from across the globe. Another different type of example, now getting closer to the news media, this is something that was shared to us by colleagues at Internews. This is a series of reporting that they did all about the cattle smuggling in the Mekong region and the impacts on human health. And what is you can see clearly here is this one set of reporting ended up yielding a number of stories in a number of different outlets and languages. So this shows you a couple of English language stories, but also one in Burmese, one in Thai, just showing the power of pictures and stories to be able to tell this experience and to make it available in a wide array of locations. And then the final one that I'll share just as a glimpse in terms of the power of storytelling hits a little closer to home. So as was mentioned, the Planetary Health Alliance currently is housed at Johns Hopkins, and their public health magazine had a whole feature on planetary health. And what I love about this magazine is that it brought together such a variety of stories, all focused on planetary health, but really showing the different scales. So there were stories that were focused on environmental justice in Baltimore, which is the city in Maryland within the US where Hopkins is located, but it also featured words of wisdom from an Indigenous leader from New Zealand. And I think that's sort of inherent in planetary health, is that it touches people in all different scales in all different places, and being able to take this look at various angles of planetary health and pulling it together allowed it to be something that would resonate with so many different audiences. I want to pull back and sort of talk a little bit more about sort of what is the call to action more broadly for media, now that I've given highlighted a few examples. One of the places that we as a global community have come together is around the Sao Paulo Declaration on Planetary Health. This is something that emerged from the global community in 2021 and has signatories from across the globe. And it looks at different groupings of individuals and says, this is what your role in planetary health is. So it has a section for policymakers, for educators, for businesses, as well as the one for the media. And so I wanted to just pause on this page to really show you what the community came together in several years ago to sort of articulate this is the role of the media. And it really emphasizes the importance of a free press and the need for open discussions and connections. It really talks about being committed to being able to provide information not only on the science of planetary health, but also those values, because as we said, it's those values that we know are going to drive change. It's about telling the stories of those who are protecting nature and who are fighting for equity. It is about helping all of us see those connections between the actions we take and a safe environment and human health. In addition to uplifting those stories of those who are protecting nature, it's also about holding to account those who are damaging the planet's health, natural systems. And it's this balance of how do we inspire and motivate rather than fear. So yes, I started today's conversation talking about all the harms to human health, but it's important that we also balance that with what are the opportunities to move forward in a way that is portraying this in a way that's honest and respecting the dignity of the people who are portrayed. Very importantly, I think in this day and age, it's also about fighting the epidemics of misinformation and really lifting up the voices of all of those who traditionally do not hold power. And I mentioned already the important role of Indigenous voices, since the understanding of the relationship between the health of the planet and the health of people has been something that is central in so many Indigenous cultures for so long, and there's so much that we can learn from that. Building off of the Sao Paulo Declaration, in 2024, the global community released the Planetary Health Roadmap and Action Plan. So this was released in the Planetary Health Annual Meeting in 2024 in Malaysia, but was the result of a year-long process and over 100 volunteers who were sort of trying to lay out a path forward for planetary health. And they end the roadmap with an action plan, which identifies 6 areas of action. And there are currently working groups in each of those 6 areas working to make progress in those different domains. So those areas just quickly are, the first one is measuring planetary health. How do we get an understanding on a national level of what is the state of planetary health in each country so that we can use that as a benchmark for measuring progress? There's one on communicating planetary health, which I'll get back to in a minute. The third is educating to achieve this great transition. So it's everything from how do we incorporate planetary health into the teachings of our youngest children through school, graduate school, and vocational training and ongoing continuing education. It is about how do we have a holistic governance system? So how do we look at, particularly in these multilateral processes, how do we have a unified view of planetary health, and how do we build the capacity of planetary health leaders to be able to intervene in these settings? It is importantly also about how do we engage the business community. So within the roadmap, there's an effort to lay out almost a guide for businesses interested in engaging in planetary health. And this group is now focusing on bringing that guide to life, and in particular has an emphasis on those small and medium enterprises. And finally, mainstreaming is how do we pull it all together? So if we are doing each of these pieces correctly, how is it that planetary health becomes part of our daily decision-making, as individuals, organizations, governments? How do we incorporate this planetary health lens in what we do? So I do want to talk a little bit about the communications working group. It is probably the one that's most salient for this audience. And they are engaged in a number of projects. This work is being led by the Sunway Center for Planetary Health in Malaysia. They're working with the Pacific Disaster Center and a team of volunteers. And for a couple of these efforts, they've also engaged Internews to help with some data gathering and some development of reports. So the first piece of this is a landscape analysis. So how do we better understand who is using planetary health information? Who are those consumers, and what are their preferences? What knowledge do they have? What knowledge do they need? Who are those key audiences that we're trying to reach? To what extent are we trying to reach political leaders and decision makers? To what extent are we reaching the general public? And for each of those audiences, what do they need to know, to think, to do, to feel, to be able to have that action that we've talked about as our goal? And then, of course, what are both the barriers and opportunities to be able to reach all of those audiences? So that's the first component, which is the landscape analysis. Internews is also working on a mapping of who are the relevant stakeholders, who are the people talking this, how do they communicate, what are those challenges and opportunities, how can that be improved? And there's a real emphasis here on how does artificial intelligence fit into that. So we are very eagerly awaiting the deliverables from this work. The first is just a report that kind of will summarize what they've learned. So they're gathering information now. I don't have those results now, but they're gathering that information now from both the landscape analysis and the stakeholder mapping. And then that will evolve into a strategy document, which will include really a concrete plan for how do we implement that strategy and how do we monitor its progress. So I think there's a lot of exciting things to come here. Unfortunately, I don't have the results of those to share with you yet, but I hope you'll stay tuned with us as we're all eager to learn from this effort. Another component of the communications working group is really focusing on that behavior change. And in this case, they're leveraging the fact that Malaysia is the first country to have a national planetary health action plan. It is in the process of being finalized right now, and it has a component all about behavior change. And so the working group is going to look to take the work from the behavior change working group from Malaysia and really help to amplify that elsewhere. And then the final piece is a series of journalist training. So the first one is being held later this month in Sunway University in Malaysia that's focused on heat and health. There will be a series of other trainings this year. It is yet to be determined what the geographic scope of those trainings will be, whether they are focused solely on Southeast Asia or if they will expand. There are plans to continue to have workshops in coming years. So I encourage you to sort of stay tuned with us. We will be helping the Sunway Center to publicize these as these opportunities come up. One of the things that I think is so exciting is that the interest has been tremendous. So this first workshop, which again was sort of geographically limited, I think they had slots for 20 or 30 journalists and got over 300 applications. So one thing I know is a huge sign is just the genuine interest in covering these issues and the desire from journalists throughout the globe to be able to have the tools necessary to be able to tell these stories. And so with that, I know that my time is running short, so I just want to close with just a little bit more information about the Planetary Health Alliance. As was mentioned, and I think the numbers keep updating every day, so it's hard to keep track of the right numbers. We're now actually approaching 500 member organizations from about 80 countries. We welcome nonprofit organizations, governments, all who are focused on various parts of the Planetary Health Challenge. We convene those members through our annual meeting, through a series of regional hubs that are very active to galvanize local action. We have a Planetary Health Campus Ambassador Program and a Next Generation Youth Council leadership. I mentioned things like the Constellation Program. So there are many opportunities to engage with us, and I welcome all of you who are interested in learning more to join us in this global effort. And I'm just going to close with some of the links to a couple of the places that I sort of alluded to throughout the course of this presentation so that you can see some of the URLs about the Planetary Health Alliance as a whole, the Lancet Commission, that initial report, the Constellation Project, the magazine I showed you, the roadmap and action plan, and then FAM 2025 is our upcoming meeting. So with that, I would love to welcome any questions, any opportunity for conversation. And I just want to thank you all so much for the opportunity to be a part of this conference. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jessica Kronstadt, for that highly informative and incredible innovative session. It was truly a pleasure to have you and your insights. And I'm sure we all have a lot to think about after such an engaging presentation. With such an amazing session, I'm confident there are many questions on many of our minds. So let's now move on to the Q&A session. To facilitate this, I would like to invite Ms. Binduja V, Assistant Professor of Chrysler College, Department of Media Studies, to take over and continue with the session.
Thank you, Neva. I'm very privileged to invite you to the question and answer session where the participants have the opportunity to engage in a meaningful discussion on the focus theme, media, planetary health and human progress. Let's move on to the first question. Digital media and storytelling have a significant role in engaging youth and generation alpha to support planetary health initiatives. How effectively they be involved? I think the question is clear.
Yes, thank you for that question. I mentioned just at the very end there that we have what we call our Next Generation Youth Council, and this is a new effort for the Planetary Health. It's sort of an evolution for the Planetary Health and Alliance. But in this current iteration, we have about 10 young leaders from throughout the globe. I think we have about 8 different regions represented, and this was one of their priorities. How do we help engage youth in storytelling? And so they are just now embarking on an effort to collect really brief stories that talk about either how individuals have sort of had lived experience dealing with environmental change and the harmful impacts, and or how they have taken action in their communities to address it. And so we are now compiling the first of a series of little video vignettes from across the globe sharing those stories, and we're looking forward to expanding that now. Prior to this, we've had a Planetary Health Campus Ambassador Program, which is a little different in that it is focused on students who are in school in one form or another. And they have found this to be really effective too. One of the things that all the campus ambassadors do is some form of presentation. And so we've seen some of those come back, and some of them have been really creative uses of digital media to tell that story. So I think it's a really powerful tool. I'm excited about this new chapter that we are embarking on with these video stories. We will be launching them in about a little over a month on our website, and we will welcome others to contribute to it because we do think it's an important part of telling the story.
Second question is, how can journalists counter information and effectively communicate environment?
I'm not hearing the question.
Can you repeat?
Binduja, I think 2 gadgets is switched on. One of the gadgets should be switched off, otherwise echo will be coming. Okay, and unmute and please ask question.
Okay, is it clear?
Yes, continue.
Okay. How can journalists counter misinformation and effectively communicate environmental issues to India's diverse multilingual audiences?
That is a great question about how to counter misinformation. And I think it is one we are all struggling with, and I can't pretend to have the right answer to that. I think what is critical is both providing, reliable sources, also helping to show people what's behind the story. So being able to show sort of that transparency of what that source is. But I think this is something that we're all really confronting as a major challenge, and really building up the credibility of news sources is going to be so critical. And I would love to introduce, I'm sure throughout the course of this conference, you will have multiple opportunities to discuss this, because I do see this as one of the most serious concerns that we are facing at this time. And so I'm hoping to learn from you all as you continue to explore this issue, because I think it's one that is on the minds of all consumers of the news media, as well as all of those who are in the news media, as a real challenge that we're facing now.
Moving on to the next question. Nature-based solutions has significant role in sustainable futures. So how these initiatives can be identified, nurtured, and promoted for social scalable impact?
Thank you for the question. Nature-based solutions really are a great source of looking towards the future. I think part of what we all need now are to hear about those solutions. And I think one of the things that we're interested in working with others on is sort of building those repositories of stories and examples of where things have been effective. And I think that we're beginning now to connect with other efforts. So for example, the Global Commons Alliance has a program that does some work in this area. What we're really hoping and need to partner with the news media with better is to figure out, where do those examples exist? How can we point people to that sort of a growing repository of where people can find those examples? And then how can journalists and others take those, here's sort of the technical examples of how this work. How can the news media turn those into stories to also make them compelling to readers who, so that we can reach sort of those who need the nitty-gritty of the detail and kind of can get the technical specs, but how can we also tell the story to inspire policymakers and the general public to be able to work towards them. So one of our efforts that we hope to be building out is, in addition to this repository of stories, sort of that are capturing those individual youth examples, we would love to be building more solutions and case studies that really are talking about those policy solutions and helping to make those available. And so would love, as we become aware of those, to have the news media help amplify them. And similarly, if all of you are hearing about stories that you think we need to be able to collectively point to and sort of organize how people find them, we would love to partner in that so that we can help spread the word. I think one of the things for us, and I know particularly sitting where we are in the world, it's really so critical to hear the stories of what works. It is so easy to focus on what the challenges are, and so having more of those nature-based solutions and other success stories are going to be even more critical than ever.
How can we integrate planetary health considerations into healthcare systems and public health policies?
Great question. There are so many different ways to integrate this into healthcare and public health. So part of it, the first piece, I think, is really taking to heart the notion of, in healthcare, we should do no harm. So I think it is taking a very serious look at the practices of healthcare facilities in terms of thinking through how to minimize their footprint. So not only in terms of the energy and the carbon dioxide emissions, but also, in terms of sometimes use of single-use products that isn't necessary. I think we need to do it in a way that recognizes, conditions are different elsewhere, and the most important thing is that we are providing the care that our patients need, but how can we do it in the way that is most responsible in terms of the footprint? So that's part of it. The other part is that health professionals are really trusted voices, and so how can health professionals use their voices to talk to patients about the changes that they may be able to make in their lives, but also to be able to talk to policymakers and others about, if our concern collectively is to have the healthiest population we can't do that if we are continuing to have pollution and other environmental impacts that are adversely affecting health. So I think it goes everything from how can we take a look at the systems that are used in healthcare and public health and reduce the harm? How can we use the platform? And then I think the third piece, which I also don't want to lose track of, is how can nature be also part of the cure too? So there are continuing movements about how can you help encourage or provide supports for people to have access to the food, to healthy foods, but how can you also encourage there to be access to green spaces? Particularly there's, a lot of evidence about sort of the healing power of being out in nature. So how can we also not only see the role of how do we protect nature, but how do we acknowledge the role that nature has in protecting each of us?
Thank you, Jessica, for an engaging Q&A session. I hope everyone found the session informative and inspiring. Looking forward to more insightful discussions in the future. Switching over to Neba. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for answering all our questions so wonderfully. I'm sure all our doubts we had have now been cleared, and it was truly an insightful session. A special thanks also to Ms. Bindu Javi for facilitating the Q&A and effectively conveying the participants' question. Up next, it's my pleasure to invite Meenakshi P., a second-year student from the Department of Media Studies at Christnagar College, to introduce our second keynote speaker.
Good evening and good morning, everyone. I am Meenakshi, a second-year student at Christnagar College, Trivandrum. It's a privilege to be a part of this exciting and thought-provoking conference, IMPETUS 2025. It is with great honor that I introduce Dr. Antonio Abreu, a distinguished leader in the field of ecological and earth sciences. Dr. Abreu, a native of Portugal, was appointed Director of the Division of Ecological and Earth Science in the Natural Science Sector of UNESCO and Secretary of the Man and the Biosphere Program in April 2023. Dr. Abreu holds a degree in biology from the University of Lisbon and a PhD in marine biology from the University of Madeira, Portugal. His academic and professional journey has been defined by a steadfast commitment to environmental sustainability and biodiversity conservation. Prior to his current role, Dr. Abreu served as a representative of Portugal and Vice President of UNESCO's International Coordinating Council of the MAB program since June 2022. Additionally, he was a research and manager of UNESCO Chair in Biodiversity and Conservation for Sustainable Development at the University of Coimbra from Portugal 2020. Throughout his career, Dr. Abreu has been at the forefront of global effort to protect our planet and ensure the well-being of our future generations. His leadership at UNESCO has enabled the development of critical initiatives that address the most pressing environmental challenges of our time. Today, as we gather under the theme Media, Planetary Health, and Human Progress, Dr. Abreu's invaluable expertise will guide us in navigating the intersections of communication, environmental stewardship, and sustainable human progress. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Antonio Abreu to share his groundbreaking insights and vision for a more sustainable and equitable world. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know where you are, all of you. It's a great pleasure and honor. First of all, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to take part in this interesting and promising and very important discussion, and to allow me to bring one of our programs. We have several ones. And to show a little bit what we do and what can be the role of media to enhance or to make us do even a better job, but also to bring more people on board. I will try to share my screen, which I think is this one. So kindly confirm that you can see my screen. Can you confirm if you see my screen?
Yes, sir, we can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. So basically, I will use for this conversation the UNESCO designated sites, in particular focusing on UNESCO biosphere reserves, to show a little bit of what we do. This more or less links with what Jessica just spoke about us very brilliantly, and because we are talking all about the same. And then let's see what can be the role of media and how can we enhance communication in better sharing and explore different ways of doing what we are trying to do. First of all, UNESCO, as you all know, it's a UN agency that is responsible for science, education, communication, and culture, of course. Currently, we have 194 member states, so almost all countries in the world are part of UNESCO. And UNESCO started in 1945 in a way, in the aftermath of the Second World War, in a way that understands that peace, like war, there is only one way to solve it. As any war starts in the human's mind, it should be in humans' mind that we need to find peace. And we believed, and since 45, that education, culture, and science all together, plus communication, can be a way of contributing for stimulating a peaceful and cooperative environment. UNESCO is the only agency that UN agency that designates sites. And sites are territories, but not only territories, there are territories with people. And maybe you know the three designations that UNESCO makes. It's World Heritage Sites that most of you have heard for sure. And then there is also the biosphere reserves and the geoparks. Geoparks, it's a more recent program. And we operate through networks of all these sites, but we also work with UNESCO chairs, Category 2 centers, member states directly, and other partners. Whatever is the site, the typology of site that you may want to consider, you should see them not as competitive or complementary things. They are only entry points for something that Jessica mentioned, that is looking for solutions for a better and more sustainable development model. So through our sites, we are at the forefront of interconnectivity of territories through these unique networks of sites that brings together nature, culture, and all values and consciences. So it's not just about protecting heritage, let's say cultural heritage or natural heritage or biodiversity elements or geodiversity elements, but it's assuming, and this is a big element, a big piece of communication, it's assuming that nature conservations or natural resources conservations and appropriate management is a pillar, should be a pillar for socioeconomic development. It brings, at the first glance, and immediately a sort of support to identity, because we human beings, we are not a part of nature. And what we are, the way we see the world, the way our conscience and our understanding of ourselves and the others, it depends on the place and the nature that we that shapes our mentality and development through our history, personal and collective history. So we believe that protecting nature should not be an end in itself, but is a tool to promote sustainable development. And this is very important to tackle the global crises that were pointed out in the previous by the previous speaker. In a very complex and accelerated world where much of our development, like GDP, is dependent and has the similar curve as we have for extraction and exploration of resources. So we need to consider at least the triple planetary crisis: biodiversity loss, environmental degradation, and climate change, not in separate ways, but all combined within the context of socioeconomic development. So our commitment towards biodiversity, it doesn't speak only about species or habitats. We have a multidisciplinary mandate for education, sciences, and culture that we bring together. So you cannot make conservation just by assigning a natural park or putting scientists working there. You need to bring that as part of the education, knowledge for a better management, link that with your tradition, with your culture at local level. And this is something that puts our sites, in particular the man and biosphere, so the biosphere reserves, well placed to tackle this different way of addressing the biggest challenges, such as halting biodiversity loss. And this is not just about safeguarding biodiversity, but it's also sustainable use of resources. And then, of course, we need innovation. We need to bring science, modern science, traditional sciences, and indigenous knowledge, and bring all this together under a different model of governance that should be polycentric, multidisciplinary, and inclusive. Otherwise, it will be very difficult. So we have currently 759 biosphere reserves in almost 136 countries, almost 140. It's a growing, there is a growing interest in these sites. In their core areas, they host the most important elements of biodiversity, whether at species level or ecosystem level. And this means that we can secure through this network of 759 sites. Next year, by the way, we will have at least 34 more and in new countries. So we are getting closer to the plenitude of member states. But these sites are not only natural sites. They host 300 million people. And they need, for their development and daily life, they need to bring together socioeconomic developments, research, management of natural resources altogether. This requires a good cooperation at local level. There is a mechanism and a governance system that implies local level, national level, and international level, because there are thematic and regional networks. And this is the way we try to address and cooperate for making peace between the human species and nature, because we cannot persist in this planet if we don't achieve this equilibrium or at least attend to it. What is the role of the media in addressing global crises? From our perspective, and within the UNESCO MAP program and the biosphere reserves, we know and we have good examples that media can be a key environmental actor. So for us, the media plays a crucial role in shaping public perception, because this is about perception, but also understanding and commitment through engagement of citizens, whether they are family members, company workers or owners, or policymakers. So public perception, policy advocacy, and behavioral change regarding the environment and the health crisis, as it was said again by Jessica, it's something that we can extract, and we believe that media can play a very important role on this. Within the UNESCO MAB and the biosphere reserves, we integrate conservation and sustainable development, providing frameworks where media can amplify environmental solutions, but also socioeconomic solutions and best practices that can be used to motivate, to transfer knowledge, and to demonstrate that it is possible, in fact, to preserve nature and to find new opportunities, in particular for youth and at local level, in particular in low demography sites where most of the youth don't find alternatives instead of being exactly what their parents and great-parents were. So it is possible to use media to amplify and to share the good news, because most of the times when we speak about environment, it's only bad news. We see threats that the world is finishing, that climate change is about to destroy everything, that species are extinguishing at a rate, but we don't see many success cases that still exist, and they don't have space in the media. I can give you a few if you want, like in the Philippines, in Palawan Biosphere Reserve, where through restoration of mangroves and replanting mangroves, the number of casualties and human lives and infrastructural losses reduced to almost zero when compared before the restoration of the natural systems. But also the coral reef restoration that is now providing food, but also jobs for youth at local level. So there are many good news that we need media to share and to provide in a different and more positive and very stimulating way. And of course, we need to bridge science, policy, and society, because even if we tell good news or bad news, they tend to lie where they are originated, or in time they tend to be lost. So we believe that through accurate reporting and compelling storytelling, the media connects scientific research with policymakers and the general public. And this is a key piece for any idea that we may have about sustainable development. It is impossible to continue to live in silos and not bringing together or not showing among the different levels and different actors that it is possible to combine the best of what each of us is doing, and that there is enough knowledge and capacity that we can bring together and to implement as an action and not just as a speech. So we believe that raising awareness and enhancing environmental literacy, it's fundamental, because in democracy, you are calling citizens to take options and decisions. And the lack of information, the misinformation, and the complexity that media and how the information is produced and shared, it misleads sometimes, or it prevents access to accurate, validated information. And then people or the decision-making actors, they cannot decide based on the best information available. So there is a sense of communication urgency, and we believe that media can play a very important role, because they are able to simplify complex and environmental issues like climate change, biodiversity loss, pollution. Most of the people, they see the news, but they don't understand exactly what can be their role, and they don't understand what are the priorities. They are a little bit confused with bad news, but not clear enough to see and to position themselves towards an action that it's at their hand. Of course, showcasing success stories, as I say, so we need to highlight examples from biosphere reserves that inspire communities to adopt the best practices, and also real-time environmental reporting. We need now, because we have this capacity, we, the human society, to almost understand and see and watch what's happening all over the world at the same time. And one of the things that we learned from COVID, that we are not able to translate into the environmental crisis or climate change, it's that when we were under COVID-19, we saw in the news that this was global, of course, like climate change, but all the big numbers and the impactful information, we understood that it was all over the world at the same time. That is a thing that doesn't happen with environmental or climate change issues, because we see news about flooding in Spain, and then we forget, and then we see 2 months after in the Philippines, or a hurricane in Florida. So it's everywhere, but not everywhere at the same time. And this requires that from the communication point of view, we need to bring and raise awareness and conscience that we are living a very global issue, that although the news are scattered and one day from one side, now it's floods in Australia, fires in California, maybe in a few months it will be the opposite. No, it's everywhere at the same time, although not with the same impact. In a word, we need to mobilize action and public participation. So we are no longer just needing awareness, we need a transformation and a collective change. And to do this, we believe that, in particular from our programs, that citizen science can be very interesting, because these encourage people to participate in environmental monitoring. They can provide, but at the same time they can learn, and they understand better what is water quality, what is wildlife monitoring, why we are tracking. They can see the trends. They can contribute to the knowledge building and capacity building, and not just watching as spectators. Promoting sustainable lifestyle, of course, through media campaigns, we can advocate for some symbolic or more attractive and fashionable actions like the zero waste or the CO2 reduction, the energy efficiency, and responsible consumption. But we can do more, and we can mainstream these in education, in lifestyle, in different perspectives of our life as humans, as individuals, as companies, as families, as collectives, communities. And of course, holding institutions accountable. So if we invest in investigative journalism, and this will make more pressure not only to governments, but also to increase social and environmental responsibility in the private sector and in community level. So basically, we are offering you and we are inviting you to look at our sites where 300 million people are already there. They are aware, they are committed, they have governance, and we have capacity to support from the technical point of view and with some investments. And we can maybe use these networks to highlight and to showcase, but also to transfer and to promote a better understanding and motivating people to face in a more positive way the challenges but also the opportunities that we have for the future. This year, in September, we will have the 5th World Congress of UNESCO Biosphere Reserves. So we are bringing all the 700 more biosphere reserves together with national commissions, with researchers and other institutions to China in Hangzhou in September. And I strongly invite you to join us and to see which synergies and cooperation we can have directly at national, but also at the international level, in a way to make these your own programs and not just something that we manage from a bureau here in Paris or in our field offices in several countries. This is what I have for you today, and looking forward for any question or dialogue or observations that you may want to give. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Antonio Abreu, for that incredibly insightful and thought-provoking session. It was truly a privilege to hear your valuable perspective, and I'm certain we all have plenty to reflect on after such an engaging and enriching presentation. Given the depth of the session, I'm sure many of us have some questions. So without any further ado, let's now transition to the Q&A session. To guide us through this, I would again like to invite Ms. Bindu Javi to lead and facilitate the session.
Thank you, Neba. Let's move on to the question and answer session to initiate more discussion on the topic. Here is your first question. Many environmental stories focus on crisis and catastrophe. How can journalists balance urgency with constructive storytelling to encourage solutions rather than just highlighting problems?
Thank you very much. This is a little bit of what I mentioned. In fact, from the news perspective, what we need is impactful news. And surely there is a trend that bad news sell well. There is a saying that says no news, good news. So when we have news, normally they tend to be bad news. We are collecting, from our perspective, we are collecting a few best practices and success cases. And recently, for instance, in CBD COP16 in Cali, Colombia, we were able to bring success stories from the Latin American Caribbean, from biosphere reserves, where we showcase that it is possible to restore ecosystems without excluding people, that it is possible to ensure and to make use of the natural resources and to provide jobs, and not just that nature conservation needs done by excluding people or investments, that it is possible to trust and to work with the private sector. So it is possible to collect stories, but currently they are not all of them really available, and they are not by themselves attractive to be promoted by some media. In some cases, we notice that at local level, yes, this is happening, but we need to do an effort to bring it to a higher level. And especially during these big and major events, we need also to be able to communicate the success stories. We are now compiling at UNESCO a few fact sheets and information about success stories, not only for the map sites, for the biosphere reserves, but also for geoparks and for World Heritage. And we want to produce a booklet for the COP30 in Belém, but we will share that also with other audiences, not only during these major events. We are producing a few media materials, but we are very limited on that. So we want to share that with everybody. And if you want to make use, please, or also if you want to join us with some proposals, we will be very open to explore these possibilities. And we believe that the World Congress can be a good moment to showcase the role and the success stories of these sites. And I can finish with an example. Myself, before I joined UNESCO, I was working in many African countries, and in one small island in particular, very poor, very remote, the Biosphere Reserve was used by the government as the foreign investment attraction agency. And the airport was paid by the Biosphere Reserve, as well as the investments in tourism were made because of the Biosphere Reserves. Why? Because we were able, while there, to showcase and to demonstrate that nature and people were the only assets and that can give some competitiveness on the tourism market for this remote area. So if we can show nature, but also cultural identity and the way people live, their history, their gastronomy, we can brand this and put it in a market, in the global market of tourism that is highly competitive, as a unique experience that we want to share with the visitors. And this is what we call niche tourism. So this was made by a Biosphere Reserve, and currently the income of the families there, it's like 10 times more than they were before the Biosphere Reserve. They were able to attract investors that accepted to invest in a way that they will not disturb the environment, neither the cultural and the social dimensions of the island. So they were offering capacitation and training, and they are branding everything and positioning the island as a sustainable destination. Of course, you can say it's not too democratic because the price and the cost will increase, but tourism is a business. So if you want to be in a business, you need to be competitive. And in this case, they are using nature protection and cultural valorization as a way. So this was shown to the investors by media. It was CNN and Deutsche Welle, two main interesting media channels that broadcasted this news. And by broadcasting these ideas, they were enough to attract investors that then came to watch and to negotiate with the government. And now it's a place that you should have a look, because in fact it's working, it's changing for better life of people, but also protecting nature and securing biodiversity and cultural values that otherwise will be lost. Of course, this isn't if you can say, okay, it's a small scale, remote place, but yes, you can also argue that if it works there, it can work everywhere because it has everything to fail.
Thank you, sir. The next question. India has a rich but fragile biodiversity with 18 biosphere reserves. What lessons can we learn from global MAB initiatives to strengthen conservation efforts here?
Well, India is in fact a universe. It's not just a country. It's a massive country with a huge diversity, not only from natural sites, but also from the cultural dimension. And recently we had a meeting here with the India permanent delegation, and we are currently reviewing, because the biosphere reserves, once they are approved, they have a mechanism of periodic reviews to see if they are fulfilling the commitments. So currently there is a very interesting and very strong interest from India in this program. We have new applications, 5 new applications for this year among the 30. So it's the country with the highest number of new applications of biosphere reserves, which shows that the concept was really understood by the country, that is well worked at different levels, so not only by the central government, but by the different states. And there is another thing that I can add to this. Finally, because this program is very old, it has 50 years old more, and during the last, let's say, 4 or 5 decades, it was seen as more symbolic than operational. And this is something that, since I arrived, I am trying together with my team to showcase that we are not just putting pins in our chest. This is really something that can make the difference. And some countries finally they realize that through these investments, it's less expensive than making more protected areas, because a protected area, it's a law, so it doesn't solve the problem by itself. You can make a law, but reality doesn't change just because you did a law, or there is a decree, or there is a legislation that is implemented. If you don't bring together the communities with the conservation, it will not work. And finally, the new Kunming-Montreal biodiversity framework calls that by 2030, you should have at least 30% of your country under some other effective conservation measures that are not necessarily just protected areas. So finally, the countries with us, we are realizing that we can reach this target if we invest in UNESCO sites, because they are less expensive, so you don't need to make more protected areas, because this normally brings conflicts, it takes time, investment, and it's not effective that it will work, because normally they are not working with communities, and this generates some conflicts and political issues. So if you consider the transition areas of the biosphere reserves, you can reach at the 30 by 30 goal more easily and, more important, more effectively. So India is recently showing great interest, and we are, 2 weeks ago, I had here in this office the ambassador of India at UNESCO, and we are working with the national authorities. Last week, there was also a meeting about geoparks, and we believe that there is a growing interest that can be interesting if well managed and well communicated, of course.
Next question. Low and middle income countries' governments find it challenging to fund large-scale projects to sustain biospheres. How can corporations play a role in funding support?
Yeah, this is a very key element. During many years, the private sector was not considered by conservationists. They were considered enemies. They were considered that if they are investing is greenwashing. So we live in the 21st century, and we need to believe that also from the corporate point of view, there is a lot, that there was a big transformation. And now, even for the consumption point of view and for the marketing point of view, they are forced to implement best practices as they have social responsibility and environmental responsibility. So this is offering new opportunities, and we need to increase dialogue between the public and the private sector, academia, UNESCO, everybody. And I can tell you that the biggest projects that we have now, one of them, among the biggest projects, one of them in the Amazon forest, we are working with communities, we are monitoring fires, we are restoring ecosystems, tropical forest, but also we are restoring some species that were linked with traditional use, like paintings or ceremonials, that if the species goes, the traditional rituals and all the cosmetics and all the things that are related will go. And this project is sponsored by a private company. So it's LVMH, that is a big company, French-based, of luxury, cosmetics and fashion. And they are interested because they want also raw materials that will not be available if nature is not intact. We are now negotiating another project with a similar company, but even Volkswagen, we have a project on mobility, clean mobility and biosphere reserves. So it's now becoming the time where nobody should be excluded. Of course, we need to do due diligence. We need to be conscient, and we need to ensure that the partners, it's not just cleaning or greenwashing, but yeah, without the private sector, we cannot work because the governments are not enough to secure the funds that we need. And moreover, why we should put somebody out? Our speech, it's about inclusiveness, so we cannot put the private sector at local, national, or international level because they are the most interested parties in securing natural resources, because the natural resources are their raw materials. So once the materials are no longer there, they will be ruined. And if we talk about sustainability, economic sustainability, it's a good driver. If we bring also together science, knowledge, and we teach and we work and dialogue with them on how to do it with less impact, with more sounding and effective catalytic process on nature conservation and social development. So this is possible, not only possible, but fundamental for the future.
Moving on to the last question. Investigative reporting projects can surely highlight issues for action. Media students can significantly contribute to such initiatives at scale if provided with the right training and funding. What is your thought on it?
Sure, and that requires not only training for the media, but also training for the scientists, because the scientists, they can be the best scientists in the world, but they don't know how to communicate. If you see most of the scientists in the news, and when the journalist makes a question, they don't send a clear message. They are not able, because they are not educated to that, to translate their knowledge into tangible and understandable, actionable ways for any end user. And it's not only for the public or the citizen. I mean for policymakers. I was in policy in my former life too, and I was a scientist. And then I realized, come on, I was so wrong. My science was accurate, but I was not communicating adequately. Now I'm here and I understand why they were not using my science, my knowledge, because simply they were not understanding. It's not because they are not in favor or not against. It's a question of communication. So I think we need to reshape in academia with communities and to also explain to the scientists that they need to get training, capacitation on communicating. And this will be interesting for them not only to showcase what they do in a different way than just publishing a paper in the most interesting magazine, but also to attract investment. Because if a scientist is able to show to an investor or to a government that what he does, it's solving or helping to solve a big problem, then there will be money. There will be money. Because as I said to my students during more than 30 years teaching, I don't know any case of a big or interesting project that was not implemented to the lack of money. It's a communication issue. So I think it's more dialogue, and this is what, again, UNESCO can bring on board, because our mandate brings not only ecological and earth sciences, but also education. So we can reach through formal education, through vocational and professional teaching, but also awareness and information in general. And this is what we are trying to do here, but we cannot do it alone. So we need to find the best partners, the best people, according to the needs, to find tailor-made information and communication, whether at local level in the community or at national level or in regional, international level. But I believe that if we ensure this communication platform, if we bring together people that daily they are never meeting, because the guys that are doing nature conservation, they barely speak with the private sector. But in biosphere reserves, they are forced to do it. And this is the new change. This is the new framework where they are a little bit lost, both because, okay, I am talking with the conservation, but they don't like me. How can I convince them? Okay, we can do this mediating process. We facilitate communication, and we can bring the rest, the interested parties, and not just the interests.
Thank you, Antonio, for your valuable insights. Neba, you can proceed.
Thank you so much, Dr. Antonio.
Neighbor, 1 minute.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much to Dr. Antonio Ebru. And even though some delay happened for your session, it was very insightful and informative session. And we are very much grateful. And I thank you on behalf of Christnagar College, Department of Media Studies. Thank you so much for giving such a wonderful session.
Thank you very much. Feel free. You have my contacts for anything that we may be useful. I end with this. My position here, and I say this to my colleagues in my division, is that we are not a foreign body. Our shareholders and boss, it's member states, so you, but you are also our clients. So feel free to knock at any time and count on us for anything that can be useful for you. And congratulations for this event too.
Thank you so much. We would love to collaborate with UNESCO. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Neba, carry on.
Thank you so much, Dr. Antonio Abreu, for your insightful response. Just like Manjumis said, your clarity in addressing our questions has truly helped us in clearing our any uncertainties, and I'm sure we all have gained valuable knowledge from this session. I'd like to thank Ms. Bindu Javi for making this session interactive and allowing us to engage with the content more deeply. We appreciate both of your effort in making this a productive and inspiring session. As we bring today's session to a close, I would like to take a moment to express our deepest gratitude to all those who contributed to making this event such a success. First and foremost, a heartfelt thank you to Ms. Jessica Kronstadt, Program Director of Planetary Health Alliance at Johns Hopkins University, USA, and Dr. Antonio Abreu, Director of the Ecological and Earth Sciences Division. Your invaluable insights have truly enriched today's session, and we are grateful for the time and effort you have dedicated to sharing your expertise with us. Our sincere thanks also goes to our esteemed advisory committee, especially Reverend Father Sirik Madathil CMI, Director and Manager of Christnagar College, for his unwavering support and guidance throughout this event. A special thanks to Dr. Jolly Jacob, Principal of Christnagar College, and Ms. Manju Rose Matthews, Head of the Department of Media Studies, for their continued leadership and dedication to fostering such enriching experience for our community. We would also like to extend our appreciation to the organizing committee, especially faculty coordinators, Mr. M.L.S. Abraham, Dr. Akhila S. and Ms. Bindu Javi, whose hard work and commitment made this event seamless and impactful. I would also like to thank the student coordinators, and with that, the efforts behind the scenes were truly invaluable. Finally, to all the participants, thank you for your enthusiastic involvement and engagement. It is your energy and commitment that makes these discussions so meaningful. On behalf of the entire organizing team, we express our sincere gratitude, and we look forward to the continued exchange of ideas and knowledge in the sessions to come. Once again, I would like to thank each and every one of you for joining us today. It has been an enriching experience, and we hope you've gained valuable insights from the session. Now, I would once again like to invite Ishan Shafiq Mohammed to give us a preview of tomorrow's session.
We are excited to announce that tomorrow will be day 2 of IMPETUS 2025, where we will be joined by Professor Tracy Levitt-Jones from the University of Technology, Sydney, Australia, and Claire Lane, CEO of Save Our Supplies Australia, who will be sharing their expertise in their respective sessions. I kindly request all participants to join us promptly at 9:20 a.m. IST for tomorrow's sessions. Also, don't forget to provide your feedback for today's session. The feedback link is available in the YouTube description box below.
That's all for today. I'm Neba Anna Thomas signing off from Christnagar College, Trivandrum. Thank you once again, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Have a nice day.